Advancement for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to Cleveland Neighborhood Progress's workshop, Building and Engaging Diverse Boards. CMP's commitment to organizational capacity development is evidenced by sessions like the one we're hosting today. We're delighted to be joined by community development board members, staff, and people from partner organizations. We will continue to bring the industry quality sessions and are always open to your ideas and input on future workshops. We also welcome suggestions about how CMP can partner with other organizations to bring programming to the community development and economic development ecosystem. A few housekeeping notes. Please keep yourself on mute throughout the workshop to avoid background noise and interference. Please use the chat feature to ask questions. Melinda Giganti and Pam Fine will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. As time allows, we will allow for some Q&A at the end and collect any unanswered questions to be answered at a later time. As a reminder, like past sessions, today's session is being recorded and will be available for viewing by those who couldn't log on today at a future time. We also welcome you to revisit it as you need to. Today's session is an action-oriented approach to building diverse and engaged board members. Be prepared to reveal your board experiences and insights through the breakout rooms we will be hosting. Today's presenters are likely familiar to many of you. To me, they are mentors and trusted confidants. They come to us with a wealth of experience. They are Randell McShepard and Janice Small. Randy is currently employed as the Vice President of Public Affairs and Chief Talent Officer for RPM International Incorporated, a $6 billion chemical coatings paint company headquartered in Medina, Ohio. He's responsible for coordinating external affairs and corporate philanthropy for the company and manages government relations, corporate purchasing initiatives, and executive leadership development programs. Randy worked for 15 years in nonprofit management positions prior to joining RPM, with a focus on workforce development, economic development, government affairs, and community service. Randy is active on several boards in Northeast Ohio, including the Cleveland Foundation, Destination Cleveland, and Taylor Oswald LLC. He is a co-founder and chairman of Policy Bridge, an African-American policy think tank serving the Northeast Ohio region, and he's the co-founder of the Riddall Green Partnership, an urban farm in Cleveland's Lower Kinsman neighborhood. Randy was born and raised in Cleveland and is a proud alumnus of John F. Kennedy High School, Baldwin Wallace College for undergrad, and Cleveland State University for graduate school. Janice Small is president of Janice Small Associates, a consulting firm based in Cleveland, Ohio, focusing on strengthening community development, social service, educational, faith-based, and cultural arts organization for increased service to the community. Janice has over 15 years of experience in capacity building consulting in areas that include board development, leadership development, strategic planning, fundraising, organizational development, marketing, and promotion for many national, regional, and local nonprofit and civic organizations. Janice shares her knowledge and abilities not only with her clients, but also with the next generation of administrators by returning to teaching in the graduate nonprofit program at Case Western Reserve University. She previously taught at John Carroll University for 6 years, at Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations for 10 years, and at Baldwin Wallace University for 10 years. It is my pleasure to turn the screen over to my friends, Janice and Randy.
Randy, you are mute, and I am going to ask you to get us started. I just have to say, I see so many of you and so many names that I wish I could be running around hugging you all right now. So, Randy.
Yes. Well, good morning. I'm with you on that, Janice. So many familiar faces, legends in various neighborhoods throughout Northeast Ohio. This workshop is very, very personal and critically important to me as a person who is a lifelong Clevelander, who is dedicated his career and all of his spare time to trying to make Cleveland better. And that work has typically happened through the nonprofit sector, through organizations like those that you all serve on a daily basis. I first became aware of the egregious disconnect in terms of minorities serving on nonprofit boards back in 2006, when the Urban Institute released a national report that said that at that time, 86% of all persons serving on nonprofit boards were white, and 8% were African Americans, and the rest were other minority groups. And of course, that article caused quite a stir because it went on to say that a good number of the individuals being served by various nonprofit organizations are communities of color. And if you don't have a diverse board helping to make decisions and sort of keep an ear to the ground around those issues affecting those communities, you'd be sort of missing a lot of important opportunities and information. So way back then, I worked with a group to assemble African-American leaders to begin reaching out to find African-American professionals that might want to serve on nonprofit boards. And we did that for many years in partnership with BVU. I see Lauren from BVU on the line, and they've been great partners. Janice and I have consulted together for many years with many nonprofit organizations, and we've had many parking lot conversations about, wow, wish that board could be a bit more diverse because there seems to be perspectives that are missing, and how might we think about this? How might we do this? It's been a passion of Janice's, it's been a passion of mine. I just wanted to share a couple of statistics in addition to the one I just gave you. Leading with Intent, which is referenced in many periodicals and articles across the country, over the last few years has reported that 84% white board member number remains. And 90%, they also report, of all board chairs are white. So I thought that was quite telling, as well as 90% of chief executives of nonprofit organizations are white. So you start to understand where we might be missing the boat, or where there might be opportunities for diversity and inclusion, which would bring those perspectives, much needed diverse perspectives, to the work of any and every organization. Board Source, this was sort of sad to me, reported that despite many nonprofit organizations' stated desire to have more inclusive boards, only 20% reported actually doing something about it. So we all know in these difficult times in our country where we're trying to figure out D&I and inclusion and so forth, that many people are talking about it, but at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we have to do something about it. So that would be my first call to action, that this doesn't end in just being a great conversation, but that we don't have Northeast Ohio having only 20% of our nonprofits actually doing something about it. And the last thing I'll share, going back to my friends at BVU, they do a nonprofit stability index. And that index that they did in 2020 stated that 58% of boards say they need better diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and policies. And also reported that only 17% are satisfied with their current board diversity. So we know there's a problem. We know there's, it's a challenge, I'd like to say, versus a problem, because there's something that this issue can actually be resolved if we all roll our sleeves up and come up with creative ways of identifying diverse talent and bringing them into the fold. And with your help and your commitment, I think we can get there. And that sort of sets us up for the next couple of exercises that Janice will be leading. So hopefully we have your attention and your commitment to sort of take this journey with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Janice.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you all for being here. And many more are joining by the second I'm seeing. Before I started my consulting practice over 15 years ago, I was executive director of 3 different nonprofits. And the last executive director job I had, I was director of Shoes and Clothes for Kids. And when I came to the organization, there was a large board of close to 30-ish people, and there were 2 people of color on the board. And the organization serves approximately 75% people of color. And when I raised that to the board leadership, they didn't understand why, so what's the problem? So what's the problem? What's the deal? And that response kind of changed my life and changed the focus of my work, or helped me develop the focus of my work, as Randy said. So we come at this in different ways, but with extreme passion, as Randy stated. Before we get into our first big assignment, there's a little assignment. Pam is going to talk us through a little poll. Pam, how do people get to vote? Is it in the chat?
Melinda's gonna pull it up.
Melinda's going to do the poll. Okay, so what we want to know first, we want to know if you're here as a board member, because we know quite a few CDC board members were planning to participate, as a board member or a staff member. That's the first question. And I know probably many of you who are staff members also sit on boards and so on. But Melinda, will you tell people how they show us if they're here primarily, first and foremost, board, staff, or other, if you don't fall into either one of those?
Yes, so I'm going to put up the poll. There's actually going to be 2 questions that pop up for them, and then they can respond, and we will give them a few seconds to do that, and then we will share the results.
So they'll both be up at once. So great. So we want to know first, are you here primarily as a board member, as a staff member, or other? And then do you represent a CDC, because many of you are with community development corporations, or another type of nonprofit, or click other if you don't fit into community development corporation or another type of nonprofit. So now to Melinda there.
We can only choose one answer for each, one choice for each question, correct?
Correct. Correct. Which fits you best?
All right, I think we're at 92%, so I'm going to end the poll here and see the results.
So do you all see these results? So this is it's close between board and staff, but the majority are board members. And over about 1/3 of you are here with CDCs and other types of nonprofits, a little bit greater all total together than CDCs. Okay, so we have a nice mix of people here. What we are going to be doing, why we're doing this 2-part workshop, and Randy and I have been doing board workshops, board trainings, board work, and other work together for quite some time, because it's too often that we hear from boards that say, our board's all white, we want to get 2 to 3 people of color on the board. We did it few, we could check that box, sign of relief. And then we hear a year later, well, we recruited people of color, or we recruited Muslims because we were all a Baptist board, or we recruited 3 millennials because we were primarily senior citizens. Again, the main focus is people of color and adding to diversity in that way. But what I just said goes for all of those. And people will say, well, they were here, but they left. And then we'll say, well, what did you do to engage those new board members? What did you do to engage your diverse board members? What do you do to engage all of your board members to be sure they feel like they're more than just checking off the box. And that is why this program today is about building and engaging diverse boards. We're going to primarily focus on the building, but we'll be talking more about engaging because they do really go hand in hand. And I will say, because it's another one of my passions with boards, the engagement piece goes for your new board members, your diverse board members, and it goes for all board members, building a deeply engaged board. So I'm going to turn this over to Randy, and he's going to give you your first assignment in breakout groups. We said this would be very action-oriented and learning from one another as much as learning from the presenters today. So Randy is going to give you your assignment. Randy?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janice. She's absolutely right. We didn't want this to be the talking heads of Janice and Randy McShepard for 90 minutes. We really, we know that there's a lot of community experience, expertise, and depth, and as it relates to managing boards, dealing with some of these challenges. So we thought, why not allow the group to break up into smaller numbers and to just have an open, candid conversation. We will take about 15 minutes for this session, and we would ask that you identify a scribe and a person that's willing to be a spokesperson that will sort of help to report back. There's 2 questions that we want you all to discuss in your small groups. The one, what have you found to be the key challenges in building a diverse board? What's really been difficult? What do you consider the key challenges of building a diverse board? And secondly, what successful techniques have you seen used to build a diverse board? I'm
sorry. Just Melinda, based on the numbers here, about how many breakout groups are there going to be?
There'll be 6.
6, okay, sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, that's fine. So you'll break off into those 2 groups. Everyone have the questions. What have you found to be the key challenges of building a diverse board? And what successful techniques have you seen used to build a diverse board? So tell your story, share with the group. Keep in mind that you have 15 minutes, so the conversation needs to move fairly briskly. And we all have long stories to tell about our frustrations with this, but now's not the time for that. We just want to get as much information as possible to come back for the group. Will ask the scribe or the spokesperson from your group to sort of report out a couple of the top themes that come from that. I'll give more instruction when you come back, but we all clear on that? I see some head shaking. Okay, so someone working behind the curtains will begin to move you into your respective groups.
Can I just add one
Pam
thing?
wants to say something. Yes.
I put the questions in the chat, and when you go into your breakout rooms, you'll still be able to view the questions in your chat in case you don't remember what.
That's always helpful. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
So enjoy your discussion and meet new friends.
And we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Okay.
That voice. I'm going
Is that
back.
you, Colleen?
It's not me.
Lie down, baby.
I accidentally left my breakout room.
We're glad to have you with us. That's okay. We're glad to have you here. And everyone else will be here soon, but we're happy to have you here early.
Did you say you escaped or you accidentally left? Which one was it?
Accidentally. The pop-up came up on my screen and I didn't even think about it. I just clicked it.
I did that once and left early by a few seconds.
All right, are we all back? Just about. I think those numbers look about right. We will go ahead and get started. Hopefully you all had a great conversation, stimulating, made some new friends, learned a few tips here and there. We are going to ask each of your groups, I believe there were a total of 6. So I will just call off the group by starting with 1, obviously, and we will ask your spokesperson in 2 to 3 minutes, please, to do a couple of things. 1, share with us the top 2 or 3 challenges that maybe were heard or talked about the most. And then secondly, give us the favorite technique for actually building a diverse board that you may have heard. And Janice will be capturing your comments on the screen here. So,
am I sharing? Are you seeing my screen, everyone?
yes, yes.
All right.
So who's the spokesperson for group 1?
I don't know how we know what group number we were in.
Yeah, we don't know our group number to begin with.
Oh,
So do any of you know your group numbers? You were, okay.
This is Khalil, we were group 4.
well, you're hired, Khalil. You're gonna start us
Start with
off,
group 4.
or your group will. I don't know if you're a
Well,
spokesperson or okay.
Brian was our spokesperson.
Okay, Brian.
Or at least he was nominated and seconded. I don't know if we had a vote.
Ah,
Yeah, actually, I was voluntold that I was supposed to.
voluntold. If
I'm
you'd be
gonna
so kind, Brian.
I will do my best.
Thank you,
Um,
sir.
Yes, we discussed the challenges that as a person who would like to join up or become a part of boards, you don't necessarily know where to go. It's like you're trying to learn a foreign language and you don't know where the people that speak it are located. We also talked about that's sometimes due to the fact that it either has to be a shared workspace or a shared worship space or a shared community space to have that social interaction so that you can get known to be put on the board. Those were a couple of challenges. As far as solutions, we had a wonderful person, and I can't remember the lady's name now, please forgive me, whose organization does that. They're sort of like a matchmaker, nonprofits or corporations that are looking for diverse board members. They act as the matchmaker for that. And so that's pretty much it. Please, Khalil, help me out if I've skipped anything.
Sure. So that was Lauren, I believe.
Now it's
Yeah.
BVU, correct?
Yeah, the
Yes.
organization.
Got it. Perfect.
So yeah, we talked about sort of the social barriers. Often familiarity is the reason why somebody gets invited to something. And so if you don't have, I think Denise mentioned, if you don't have sort of that social connection with people, if you're not in the spaces with the people who are appointing to boards, then you never get the opportunity to make yourself even known to them. And so a possible solution, we were talking about exactly the BVU or some other formalized model that doesn't rely on those social connections and instead is a more structured way of matching people to a board. I think one thing that was mentioned is that the BVU model requires maybe an employer to nominate, which might make things a little bit difficult or provide its own problems. And another possibility was going through organizations like CDCs to recruit from the neighborhoods that they serve in order to match people who might not otherwise easily come in contact with these opportunities. Of course, that potentially, depending on how that CDC operates, could present the same social connection problem because organizations tend to do that sometimes. One of the things that Helen mentioned was I think said OCI, the way that their board is constituted, there's still a great deal of elected members. And so those have to, I guess, go through the community in order to become board members. So that might change the calculation a bit. And then there's also, I don't know, did you mention, Brian, the committee?
No, I did not.
Okay,
Please.
so yeah, so the committee structure in some boards could be a way to include people who are not board members. So community members can be included in committees of that board, non-board members, and that would increase the amount of familiarity that an organization or a board has with people that they might not otherwise come in contact with or consider for board membership.
Outstanding. Well, that got us off the dime in a very powerful way. Great conversation, great suggestions. Thank you all, Khalil and Brian, for getting us started. Is there another group that knows their number? Or if not, as you see in the chat from Melinda, if you all know who you were in the group with, someone can just maybe, if you were voted a scribe or a spokesperson, please feel free to jump in.
Hey, Randy, this is Jane Cronin. We were group 6.
Okay, group 6. Thank you, Jane.
So just a quick introduction. I'm with the other major coatings and paint company in town. I work for Sherwin-Williams.
All right, great company.
I'm on the board of Providence House, so I'm here as a board member of a non-CDC, but our group talked about the challenges of some of the bureaucracy within the boards and looking at bylaws and things that have existed for, even over 100 years is what Carol mentioned, and that they went through to adjust their bylaws and things. CDC's commented about that maybe there's competing interest of board members, and that could be limiting from any either progress or bringing in others and we also talked about that the time that it takes on building trust, building relationships, having a connectivity, and keeping that level of engagement with board members to that can lead to turnover if that's not done well.
Yes.
Yep.
Building trust is key. Yes.
Yep, and I think had a couple of the team from Providence House in my group, and something we're experiencing there is candidates that we've identified are usually pretty busy by the time we get around to talking to them. That that they may love the organization, be completely engaged with the mission, but just don't have the time to participate in a board role. So.
Yes.
Sometimes the board commitment, if there's a financial commitment for board members, that could be impeding as well. The other thing then too is how do you, some like already mentioned, but where do we identify board members? It's usually through our own personal or professional networks. And are those networks diverse enough to bring in those candidates? So couple of the techniques, Carol mentioned that what they did was work with a consulting firm to help with DEI, and Providence House is doing the same thing, working with Gradient and BVU to and put things into action on how to address.
Okay.
Did I miss anything else? Did I miss anything from group 6?
That was well done, Jane. Thank you very much. In less than 3 minutes, so quite efficient. And Amy Mills says you covered it all. So, all right. So we will move forward. Does anyone else want to volunteer to share?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think we're in group 1. I'm Richard Jones, and I am the chair of a board called the Risk Retention Group, which is a group that oversees insurance products for social workers across the country. In our group, we talked about a number of challenges, and I think it's important to really use the language that we use, and that one of the big challenges is that many board chairs really are part of quote unquote white networks. And those are the networks that they actually rely on. as a sourcing mechanism. So one, it's important to name it, and two, to acknowledge that that's a very significant dynamic, as we're going about the process of trying to recruit. So the question becomes, how do we break outside of those networks in order to really spread our nets wider? Number two, we talked about as a major challenge, culture. And I think some of the elements of culture have been identified in some of the previous comments regarding bylaws, regarding history. But culture is a very powerful mechanism in boards, and is something that we really need to wrestle with, both the perceptions of our roles and what's expected of us. So we went on and on about that. We also talked about the fact that it's very important, thirdly, that we really explore ways of engaging people even once they are recruited or once they're brought onto a board. That oftentimes we might bring them on board, but then the challenge becomes one of how do we sustain their participation over time. So those are three challenges. On the strategy part, we talked about the notion of ensuring that there's a champion on behalf of DEI, not only at the chair level, but also at the CEO level. That this partnership is sometimes not fully understood, and that as we really are looking for, as a way of moving forward, it's important that in terms of the planning, that we really talk about engaging the CEO as part of that process, because that CEO is very integral to the success of the strategy. And then next, we talked about being really totally honest with anyone new coming on board, honest about financial obligations and expectations, honest about the culture of the organization, and also honest about the fact that this may take time before you can actually become comfortable in your new role as a board member. So I will stop there and just reflect on some of the thinking coming out of group one.
Richard, this is Janice. May I ask you, when you talked about the networks, which I think was such a great point, did you say part of like networks? What was
part of white networks?
white? Okay, I wasn't sure. White networks.
White networks.
White,
I thought it was really important
Yeah.
to acknowledge that, because that's a very powerful descriptor for the challenge we're up against.
And that relates to what we heard from the last group, that we identify board members through our own networks, and are they diverse enough? So
Exactly.
you took that further and really laid it out there as it needs to be. To me, that's a major issue. Thank you for raising that. Yes.
Thank you.
And it ties back to one of the statistics that I gave, that 90% of all board chairs across the country are white. So it speaks to why we see so few minorities on board. So thank you for that. You were able to deliver that, Dr. Jones, in less than 3 minutes. I would be remiss if I didn't give Dr. Jones a shout out, because many, many years ago, when I was a brand new young leader in the nonprofit space, and I didn't know anybody, and I was trying to find my way, and I called Dr. Jones to ask for help on a federal grant I was working with. I needed some introductions, I needed letters of reference, and he immediately dropped everything and couldn't have been more supportive and encouraging, and really was always that way. Many of you may recall he used to run the Centers for Families and Children for many years and did a wonderful job there, but he really taught me the importance of reaching back and helping young leaders find their way. So always good to see you, Dr. Jones. Thanks for being here today.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Convener, can I ask a question on that statistic that you brought up?
Yes, sir.
The statistic was 90% were majority culture. Would you flesh that down to gender as well?
The study that I reflected did not break it down by gender. I think you and I would probably surmise that the majority of those are white males.
Yeah.
I don't think there's nearly enough white female chairs of these boards. So that would be my guess.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you much.
You're quite welcome. Next group, either if you know your number or not.
So we've heard, Randy, from 1, 4, and 6.
Okay.
2,
Who's
3,
missing?
and 5.
So I don't know what our number is, but I can volunteer. My name is Ann Shum. I'm with Manufacturing Works. So if you can identify what number that was. I don't want to repeat what other people have said. I think that a lot of that, what was shared, we found as well. I guess I'll just say that we too experienced the fact that when you have people who have to step up to be elected, that's one of the big challenges, that you have to introduce yourself into a community and get people to stand up to be elected in a community-based board. And in groups like my organization, one of our big challenges is that we want people on our board who have kind of executive level experience, and we're looking at specifically in the manufacturing industry. And so we've had to do a little bit of kind of renegotiation about our expectations for what experience is required to be a member of our board. And then there was another key challenge that was identified, and that is generational, that we're finding that younger people aren't ready to step up and join a board right away. That kind of, you look at joining a board as a huge commitment that they're not really to bite off at one time, especially if it's just out of the gate without having had prior experience with a group. Techniques that were shared, we are intentionally creating opportunities to get people involved at the committee level and with activities in our organization, so that people kind of can develop a relationship with us. Luann shared my favorite baseball reference, and that is that she talked about creating bullpens. So you make your board smaller, you come up with like the core board, and then increase committee-based work. So smaller bites that you can get a pool of volunteers that'll step up and do smaller activities that then build that rationale. Then they get buy-in and are more likely to then stay committed to your organization.
Nice.
And yes, I think that activity, getting people excited about what you're doing in them, and then being very specific with what you're asking them to do. I think generationally, that is a great way to actually bring people in and engage them. And we just need to acknowledge that we have to, if it wasn't working, we can't expect to do the same thing and have a different result.
Excellent.
So,
I understand you are group 3, Ann. Is there anyone else? We have about 20 seconds. If anyone from your group wants to make another closing comment, anything that Ann missed that you all would want to lift up?
Go ahead, Chris. Really quick, this is Chris Schmidt from Ohio City Incorporated. And I would say that Brian Mallory, who's on this call as well, he ended up on our board from some very proactive steps that we took when we weren't getting the results, that instead of sitting around and waiting for the results to change, we went out and formally appointed several persons of color, and then created an elected seat through CMHA, and really have tried to proactively change our makeup. And we've gone in that amount of time from 1 person of color 5 years ago to now it's 7 or 8, depending on how you count.
Wow.
And so it's out of 20. That feels like it's certainly trending in the right direction, more work to do. But it took us proactively taking those steps to make that difference.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's I consider that a success story, Chris. So thank you for sharing. Okay, we will move to the next group. That was group 3. So who else? We have 2 more groups.
I guess I'll step up for group 2.
Thank you, Shauna.
Just to piggyback Chris a little bit. I won't repeat a lot of what was said. We mirrored a lot of what was said. Probably what is most germane is that there are certain boards who you have a particular level of experience that you're trying to target. And so trying to get either people of color or people who don't particularly look like this particular network has been the challenge. And part of my comments mirror what Chris was saying. Basically, what I was saying was it cannot be just a function of a governance committee or a nominating committee. It has to be the work to build genuine relationships. And so it's funny because I had just just recanted my relationship and how I got, well, just to step back a little bit, I'm a board member of OCI, but I'm also the executive director of Malachi Center. But what I was saying is why I'm a member of Ohio City Inc. is probably the biggest part of it is maybe in my first month at Malachi Center, is that Tom reached out to me and we sat down and we talked and we just had a really candid conversation about inclusion and the big G word, gentrification, and you know, and empowerment, because I don't just believe in inclusion, but the relationship was built because he was interested in my agenda as well as his agenda. And so that was a relationship that happened, that kind of evolved over a number of years. And it worked really well. And so you have to be interested, and this was the other point, you have to be interested in a new perspective. Which kind of, I think it was Ann that kind of said it, as far as our, and I call it like the residency requirements, because sometimes it's not formal. It's the unwritten law of who we think is qualified to serve on the board. And so the other piece of it that I kind of recanted from how we onboard at Malachi Center to kind of deal with it, because we have a 3-year term. And so that can be daunting. And we have a smaller board because we have a pretty engaged board. And so we onboard through committees. And so we ask that everybody, no matter who you are, serve on a committee, and it's no limited, it's no limitation to how long or how short you can serve on the committee. We've had people who served on committees for as little as 6 months and said, I'm ready to be a board member. And then we've had people who serve on a committee and say, you know, this is really daunting. And so that's one way that we get people engaged into the center and just some of the workings of the center before they make the commitment. And that's another way that we've gotten some of our candidates, and we do work with BVU as well.
Okay, well, I know Brian wanted to say something, but I would ask you, Brian, to put that in the chat, because we have to move on to the final group, and we need to transition to the other portion of the presentation. So sorry about that, but we certainly will look for your comment in the chat, Brian. One last group who did not have a chance to report yet. That was group 2, I believe, Shauna, you said? Okay, so.
Group 3, I believe, is group 3 that's missing.
No, I think Ann was group 3.
Oh, then group 5. Then it would be group 5. Group 5 is missing. We need group 5.
Sorry to interrupt the program. This is Lou. I guess I'm in the group that we did not know our numbers.
Okay.
We have lots of distinguished participants in this group, but I'm the nobody volunteered, not even voted. We did not even have time to vote for a spokesperson. In my group, lots of common situation mentioned: race, age, all those things. The reason I volunteer to interrupt the program, that's because I want to raise a particular issue. Your board may have other problems which could be more fundamental. The board today I want to talk about in my situation will be, this is a board, you have people who are two sides supposed to be helping each other, but the two sides are actually hostile towards each other politically. One side has only thinking about administrative stuff. We don't have the budget, or we don't have enough resources. So we cannot do this, we cannot do that. The other side didn't have a voice on the board in the past. So basically I kind of barged in or nudged in, it depends on how you want to see it. I'm the one on the side of receiving their services. And I got to this board to start learning why everything they offer never worked for the people they are supposed to help. Then I realized it's all about politics. So it doesn't matter what kind of race or inclusion on LGBTQ, whatever, all those things. Sorry, it's all about budget. It's all about resources in those people's eyes. So fundamentally, there is no solution for this. Up to this moment. So since I'm the I don't know, the rebel or the barbarian, low life. Look at my name. I use my name LOH. I know you guys will all mispronounce it as low, so I put low life. Actually, my name is Lou. So I will be the one with trying to get the people receiving the service a better choices and broader view. So basically, I will take the people receiving service out of this system.
Yeah,
that's what my situation is.
Lou, is it appropriate? I put on there what the challenge is that there's two sides on a board. There's politics on a board.
No. Actually, it was one side.
One side.
I by mistake opened the door for the other side.
Got it. Okay.
Not being understood, not being actually serviced, not even being treated as humans to get on the board.
Got it.
Yeah, and this sort of gets us to the fundamental, to use your word, aspects of, boards just need to be governed and run effectively in general. And that helps to address issues like political strife, which is always common, especially with CDCs and community boards. So I think we will get to some of that. I'll give you 30 seconds to make any other comments. I don't know if you have a best technique to share or not, but if not, we will move to the next section of the board. And maybe Janice can summarize, since she's been taking copious notes. Anything else, Lou?
Oh, well, I hope my my breakout room members, co-members, will not complain that I only tell you my side of the story, because their side we can actually put it into all other people already mentioned. Those are problems. I'm not saying they are not, but believe me, there are more problems than just race or age or,
Yeah, so that's exactly right. That's why we sort of split this up into two sections, one focusing on diversity on boards, and the second, just how do you make boards more effective, because both are equally important. And with that, I'll ask Janice to summarize in short fashion, of course, Janice, as time is ticking down on us. Anything jump out? You're a trained eye, you've been doing this for many years. What jumps out at you, my friend?
What jumps out is that when we get to the point on this agenda to show Randy and Janice's top tips, several of our top tips are addressing what's right here. So this made me feel good that what Randy and I thought would be helpful to you is in alignment here. Something that really stands out, I'm going to go back to what Dr. Jones said, many board chairs are part of white networks, which is absolutely the case, but it was a bigger issue to even add on to that we identify that many boards tend to identify through their own networks, which are likely not being diverse, that are likely not diverse enough. And if you need to be open to get people who don't look like the current board, who don't look like you, who don't come through your current network. So you need to kind of reframe things to look at developing new networks for recruitment and looking that as an exciting opportunity, not easy, but exciting. And then many other items on this top challenges relate to, as Randy said, the board needs to be a well-run board, a well-run nonprofit. And if there are competing interests, if there's strife within the board, if you're not taking time with engagement, which we're going to talk about, all you do isn't going to work out the way you want to. So what we heard most frequently, I believe, are developing new networks for recruitment above and beyond the networks of the current board members. Like people said, you can't just rely on the governance committee and who they work with and so on. And moving to some of the best techniques in addition to BVU that was mentioned several times. There were some great ideas about finding different ways to begin to build genuine relationships with community members, the intentionally creating activities to reach new people, the onboarding through committees. But also we heard, was it Ohio City Inc. that just immediately added some new board members, created a seat for CMHA. There were some smart ideas added that don't take the time. There are some steps you can take that are smart and quicker while doing the longer term genuine relationship building. How did I do, Randy? And how did I do, everybody?
Outstanding. I think
reasonable. And we'll send these notes to everybody, but you all in your comments set us up for the second piece, the remaining piece of our program, where we're going to talk about the incredibly important partner to building a diverse board, the engaging a board piece of things here. So Randy, do you want to bring up, or Pam can, Melinda,
yes,
bring up the PowerPoint again?
So this is something that many of you have seen before, but it's always worth going back to. Janice and I, when we work with nonprofits, always walk boards through this, because even if you know it, it's always good to be reminded of it. And if you can do these things, it certainly will address some of the challenges that Lou and others mentioned. I'll just buzz through these quickly. It's the responsibility of a nonprofit board, number one, to determine the organization's mission and purpose. That is really what a key component of what a board should be doing, setting that sort of direction about what is the North Star that we're shooting for, what's the purpose of the organization, and how will we go about building, our work around supporting that mission. Secondly, selecting the chief executive. That's a board responsibility. No one but the board has the right and responsibility of hiring the chief executive officer for that nonprofit. But then it doesn't stop there. I'm a recovering nonprofit executive director, so I always like to say, not only should you select the executive director, but you have to support that chief executive and assess his or her performance, let them know how they're doing, provide support to them. Leadership can be lonely as an executive director of a nonprofit. I'm not telling you all anything that you don't know if you've walked that walk, but the board should be checking in on their chief executive, finding out what they need, finding out how they're doing. They oftentimes don't have anyone to talk to. The staff's all angry at them because of some big decision that's been made. So it'd be nice to be able to check in with the board and sometimes be a sounding board. Number four, ensuring effective organizational planning. Boards have to know where they're going, what they're shooting for, why they're heading in a certain or rowing in a certain direction. That requires some type of a process, and the board should be ensuring that that process is a part of any annual strategy. Five, ensuring adequate resources. One of the board's foremost responsibilities, as it reads here, is to ensure that the organization has the resources to fulfill its mission, and they should be willing to help to raise money. And as has been said, just like you don't just have a governance committee to find talent, you don't just have a finance committee or a fundraising development committee to raise money. Everyone should be thinking about that. Moving on to the next slide, if you will, Pam. 6, once you get those resources, you have to manage those resources effectively. I won't get too technical, but the Ohio Attorney General talks about duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience. There's fiscal responsibilities. We are fiduciaries as board members of those organizations, so we have to make sure that money is being spent the proper way. 7, we should always determine, monitor, and strengthen the organization's programs and services. Never settle into a status quo. The world is changing. Look how much the world has changed for all of us over the last 12 to 14 months. So if we're not keeping an ear to the ground and looking at our current organization and figuring out how to remain relevant in today's environment, not just COVID, but social unrest and all these kinds of things, we'd be missing the boat. So it's the board's responsibility to continue to monitor and offer new approaches to the work. 8, enhance the organization's public standing. We should all be ambassadors for the organization. We should talk it up. We should bring people out to see it. We should talk to media, talk to community groups, do whatever the case may be to enhance the public standing or strengthen any public relations efforts on behalf of the organization. So many great nonprofit organizations don't get the support that they need because people simply don't know who they are and what they do. And every day I hear people in philanthropy talk about an aha moment they had when they learned about this great organization that maybe has been around for decades, but no one happened to know much about their work. So that's where a board member can help. 9, ensuring legal and ethical integrity and maintaining accountability. That's not much different than what I talked about before. It's the board's responsibility for ensuring that legal standards and ethical norms are followed around any number of issues. It's just something that the board has to stay on top of. And finally, as we've talked about a lot today, recruiting and orienting new board members and assessing board performance. Of course, recruiting new board members should include a diverse set of board members, which goes back to the first half of the program. But we all should be going out as board members and thinking about who would fit, who would fill certain gaps on the board, et cetera. So we just wanted to walk you through those 10, and I'll ask before we share the personal views of Janice Small and Randy McShepard. Do these 10 still seem, do you feel like your organizations are following these 10, and do you still feel that these are the right 10 items that should be addressed? Anyone want to say anything about it? Any glaring omissions, or do you think these 10 really are the 10 that still matter for most organizations? We'll take 1 or 2 comments and then we'll move on. Any thoughts? Do these still feel right? I can see a couple of heads shaking.
Just a quick comment.
Yes, sir, Dr.
I think
Jones.
these are all right, but I really think that because of the day's world we live in, that I think an 11th responsibility is really to make a full-blown commitment to DEI. I think we really need to lift that up and really place some emphasis around it.
Yes. Thank you for that. What gets measured gets done. And if we start to talk about this on a regular basis, maybe we'll start to see the changes that we hope for with respect to D&I. So thank you for that. So by the powers invested in me, Dr. Jones, I hereby declare that there are now 11 versus 10 responsibilities of boards. No, I would encourage all of you to take that back to your respective organizations. And with that, I think, Janice, we can maybe begin to share our tips on where
okay. So what Randy and I have been talking about in preparing for this presentation, and many of you know that at CNP's past formal in-person Progress Institute conferences, many of you have come to workshops that Randy and I have done as part of that, and always say we need more time, we need more time. But what you always wanted to hear was, but what do you both think? What do you both do? So we did Randy and Janice's top tips on diversifying boards and engaging boards. And Pam or Melinda, so we have the engaging board before the diversifying boards. Is that correct? Okay. So these are tips. Okay. Engaging a board. So this is the reverse of how we just talked. We are assuming that you are out there doing your hard work to recruit diverse board members. You want to engage them and all board members. First tip, be sure both board members and staff members understand their respective roles. What is the role of the board? What is the role of the staff? And provide training as needed on the role of the board and the role of the staff and the relationship. One of the first topics that someone mentioned as a challenge is For new board members or people who haven't sat on boards, they sometimes feel like it's a foreign language, like you're speaking a foreign language. And as we always say, that's okay. If you're recruiting people who are nurses or teachers or electricians or people that work in a wide variety of manners in our community, they can be great board members, but make sure they understand. Wait a minute, the screen just changed in front of me.
Yeah, we need to go back one slide.
Go back a slide, sorry.
Okay. That's
So that was tip 1, thanks. Tip 2, I thought I was seeing things there. Okay, tip 2, this goes back to the 10 basic responsibilities. Really think through where board input is needed and is in line with the governance role in these basic responsibilities, and develop clear-cut roles and varying opportunities for meaningful board involvement, such as don't populate committees that have been dormant or have no real role or work to do with board members. Make sure you have current clear-cut roles, and that's where you place board members. Get to know the board members. We talked about that genuine relationship. Get to know the board members and help them get situated in a role within the organizational structure that aligns with their skills and their interests in the organization's needs, and keep your governance committee working year round. It's not just nominating the people and then they're done, but it's analyzing needs, recruitment, nomination, election, orientation, engagement, education, evaluation, and keeping an eye on these meaningful engagement opportunities throughout. Now, next slide, please. And this is more for, so recruit individuals with a passion for the mission of the organization. Don't just recruit people because you're recruiting people or recruiting to fill check off boxes. Make sure you're recruiting people with a passion. Set and firmly uphold expectations of what successful board engagement entails. So it's set and uphold. Assign all members to committees and to key roles. Run efficient meetings and maintain a culture of openness and candor, and conduct self-assessments and board assessments on an annual basis. So these are all things that could have an hour discussion on all of them, but these are tips for meaningfully engaging boards. So now we're going to do the Randy Janis tips on diversifying your board. Okay. First, you're wrapping your head around that you're not recruiting towards diversity because you have to or because you're being told to do so. Do it because you want to and understand the true benefits. And if you don't understand, do some reading, do some learning, so you do understand. So you're doing this because you truly, genuinely want to. Then determine what diversity will look like for your organization. In the large case of what we're talking about here, in the huge majority of cases, we're talking about diversifying your board by adding people of color. That's where there's a great deal of emphasis in placing and addressing board diversity because the history has been so bleak and the numbers that Randy has shared. We know that some of the community development corporations, though, have boards with many members of color, some of the CDCs, some even the majority, but don't think that that means you're off the hook in terms of diversity, saying, oh, most of our board is African-American. Do you need to add younger people? Do you need to add senior citizens? Are you lacking people with significant financial expertise or another key area of expertise, for example? So while primarily we're talking about people of color, there is more to it, and you need to look what diversity means for your organization. Then don't recruit people just because of the diversity category they fill. Don't just say, okay, we have 3 people of color, now we're good. Look at other aspects of demographics as well as expertise skills that your organization needs, that people bring that align with the organization's needs. So that's another way of even saying, go back to recruit people with the deep and true passion for the organization, then as well as the expertise that you're looking for. Then this is what, if you've ever worked with me, this is what I've been doing for 100 years. Or more than 100 years. Develop clear profiles. Take the time up front. Develop clear profiles for who you're looking for in new board members. For examples, we're looking to add 4 people to our board. We want all or most of them to be African American. In addition, we're hoping 1 or 2 might be millennials and have expertise, and our expertise gaps are blank and blank. Then commit to using community connectors to help you identify these candidates. That means going beyond your network, because your networks, if we're talking about race here, in most cases, going back to what Dr. Jones said, your networks are white. Most of the people, many white people know primarily white people, and so on. You have to reach beyond. Many boards I work with at this point, they say, oh, have you ever heard of Randy McShepard? We'll call him. He'll know the people. And Randy couldn't do his work at RPM if he was taking these calls all day. So we often talk, Randy and I often talk, that there's no one like Randy. There's no other Randy out there, but there are other people that can become community connectors to help you. But it's going beyond your own network. And now may I have the next slide, please? And again, network, and don't settle for the usual suspects, and don't say, well, I couldn't get that Randy McShepard guy on the phone, or I hear that, I can't tell, not literally, this is not an exaggeration. I'd say 3 out of 4 weeks, 3 out of 4 weeks of a month, people will say, do you think we could try to recruit Randy for our board? And again, there's no one like Randy, but that's not the way we want to be thinking. We know that there are many good people out there. Network, don't stop. Plan to recruit multiple minority representatives, not just one. We've heard many times where a person of color will say, so I'm the only person of color on the board, so Randy, if you want to speak any more to this, people often say to me, so they think that I'm the representative and I know everything about the whole Black community, or they think that I'm that I know everything about the Latinx community. Or is there anything else you want to say to that, Randy? Or did I get that one right?
There's a lot more I could say, but time is not our friend. So
yes.
Yeah, but you hit it.
Yeah, it's the high points. Again, each of these, there's an hour behind it. Then support diverse candidates with onboarding, mentoring, and meaningful assignments. And we've talked about parts of all of those. Seek out and celebrate diverse opinions and perspectives as a regular practice. And that's something that Lou mentioned. You want to celebrate diverse perspectives, not want to shut down diverse perspectives, and evaluate board diversity indicators annually, or at least annually. Now we're at a point where Randy has something to share with a few closing words, and then we have to turn things over to Colleen because we have 3 minutes to go. And remember, drop your questions in the chat and Randy and I will get back to you at a later time. Randy.
Yes, I'll only take 30 seconds for this. This is just one example of the types of tools that all of you could bring to your respective organizations. We talked about having some type of annual assessment. Boards have to constantly be asking themselves, what are we doing? What could we be doing better? Are we in touch? And this from the National Council of Nonprofits basically shows where you can sort of check in on how you're doing. And there's some areas here around advocacy, around conflict of interest, around diversity, around evaluating the executive director, just giving a bit of information about trends in some of those areas where some nonprofits aren't doing as much as they think they are or should be or could be, and then some practice tips. So maybe this could be put in the chat as a takeaway. I just think it's helpful for you as board members to sort of know there's tools that you can use to continue to ask these questions and keep your organizations on track and to have the conversations that you need to have. So that was all I wanted to say about that. Thank you, Janice. And I think someone already put the link there. Thank you, Todd.
Janice, you're on mute.
I'm thanking everybody so much and saying it's to you, Colleen.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, yeah, as a former director of a Cleveland CDC, as a former board member of the organization I now work for, and a board member of several organizations in the past, you think you know it all, and then you hear from Randy and Janice, and you realize I haven't even scratched this. So, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. Thank you all for participating and going along capacity development journey with us. Neighborhood Progress is committed to providing organizational capacity development to Cleveland CDCs and all of our nonprofit partners in the community and economic development space. So thank you so much for being part of this. Just a little teaser, our next workshop is next month. As a participant today, you'll likely get notice of that. We will be hosting a conversation and a panel discussion about aging in place in a society where our most treasured members, our elderly, are reaching the point of perhaps not being able to stay in their home. What are the opportunities we can provide for them to stay in their community? So this important conversation was asked for by our CDC leaders, and so we're delivering on that. Randy, Janice, thank you. Pam, Melinda, thank you for getting us to this point today. We have recorded this session. I do want to mention we did not record your breakout sessions. Those were your private sessions to have with your new friends. We will have this on our website, I'd say within the next week or so. And please feel free to share it with your colleagues, with your with your fellow board members, so that we can continue to spread this capacity. Thank you for being with us today. And with that, I will close the session. Take care, everyone.
Take care.